Welcome to Changing America. I'm Maria Teresa Kumar. Last week, President Obama's executive actions on immigration were dealt a blow. A federal appeals court refused to lift a temporary freeze on the administration's immigration programs, affecting an estimated 4 million undocumented immigrants. And the legal battle could add months of delay for the expansion of two key actions, DACA and DAPA. Meanwhile, on the other end of the spectrum, Ann Coulter sat down with Fusion's Jorge Ramos to talk about her new book, Adios America, the left's plan to turn our country into a hellhole. What a title, Ann.
You've said that Americans should fear immigrants more than ISIS.
Yes.
Most immigrants are not terrorists, not criminals.
I have a little tip
no
for
one, no one is biologically predisposed
if you
to
don't
commit
want
a
to
crime.
be killed by ISIS, don't go to Syria. If you don't want to be killed by a Mexican, there's nothing I can tell you.
Yes, that was Ann Coulter, standing by her claim that Americans should fear immigrants more than ISIS. Coulter is only one voice in the anti-immigration movement, but she's not alone. While not an outlandish in their claims, several members of the Republican Party are anti-immigration reform activists, and they're anti the executive action. But here's the scary truth. For 2016 Republican hopefuls, this could be their way that comes back to haunt them. As MSNBC's Amanda Sakuma writes, quote, while conservative leaders swiftly applauded the court's decision as a victory, those delays could stoke anger throughout immigrant communities as they wait in the wings for the executive actions to roll out. Resentment that could be placed squarely on the party responsible for causing those delays in the first place, the GOP. Here to discuss our nation's tone on immigration is Ali Noorani, Executive Director of the National Immigration Forum, and Hector Sanchez, Chair of the National Hispanic Leadership Agenda. Thanks for joining me, gentlemen.
Thank you.
Gracias.
So, first, I don't know what to do with Ann Coulter, so we'll just talk about her briefly, but I think that what she does is really start stoking the fears of a changing America. And instead of actually providing leadership on it, she actually basically goes to the bottom of the barrel. Talk to me about, one, why that tone is not only offensive, but it's also scary, because you're not translating what's happening in this country.
No, it's totally unacceptable what is happening. See somebody like this person just exploiting this space, spreading lies, hate speech, and really taking advantage of like the recession that happened, the worst recession in 80 years. People trying to understand why we're in this position, and this person just spreading lies. The important element here is to understand that this kind of speech has a direct impact in the community.
It does. And talk a little bit, talk about the hate crime. So in the Latino community since 2006, and it actually parallels when Lou Dobbs was on the airwaves with CNN, we actually saw a huge increase in hate crimes against Latinos.
No, hate crimes against Latinos have a drastic increase of almost 50% in the last year, since all this anti-immigrant movement in the nation is taking a lot of space, and it's really taking a big toll in the communities. In my case, I was very close to one particular case of Marcelo Lucero in northern New York. If you really understand and see the correlation between the Culture's kind of speech and what is happening on some of the streets in the United States, high schoolers going to having a couple of beers and going basically dinner hunting some undocumented immigrant on the street, Marcelo Lucero, and kill him just because of this lack of understanding of the issue, but just hearing these messages in the nation. It also has an impact in the quality of life of the Latino community.
And so how can we start addressing this? Because I think that she's about to go on this book tour, and people are going to hopefully not buy her books, but if you listen to the message, it's not only dangerous, but you do find some Republicans that aren't as extreme as she is, but they are espousing some of this idea that immigrants are the issue of why we're not making it in America.
Well, I think what we need right now is conservative leadership on this issue of immigrants and immigration. And we've been going back to the days of Ronald Reagan. And I mean, for Republicans, he is the,
He's Ronald.
He's Ronald, right? He's Ronnie. But when you look back, when he left office, he spoke in his farewell speech, he spoke of a shining city on a hill, and a city that welcomed people from everywhere. So for the Republican Party, they have a choice. Is it Ronald Reagan and his vision for America, or is it Ann Coulter and her vision for America? And those are two completely different journeys for not just Republicans, but for all of us in, as we would say, a changing America. So what's the who's going to lead Republicans down this path?
And who's going to lead them? And I think, and who's going to lead them? Because right now, when you're talking about a highly contested primary, and they want their voters that are the most passionate, unfortunately, a lot of those most passionate voters align themselves more closely with Ann Coulter than they do with the majority of Republicans who actually don't believe any of this rhetoric. How is that? Who's going to be able to define that?
I mean, I think that what Jeb Bush, Marco Rubio, Rand Paul, some days, have been able to do is actually carve a path forward for Republicans and conservatives on this issue of immigration reform. But then you've got Scott Walker leaning closer to Jeff Sessions. You've got Ted Cruz and others who would much rather compete for a very small slice. I think South Carolina actually provides a really interesting example because Lindsey Graham, remember, he has won multiple elections at a statewide level in spite of being for comprehensive immigration reform. So I think it'll be interesting to watch how conservative faith, law enforcement, and business leaders in South Carolina engage on this issue and then pressure Republican
Well, and South
candidates.
Carolina is closest to what the rest of America is looking like as far as the rapidly changing landscape versus, let's say, California, where you've had immigrants for a long time. So I think you're right. I think that could be a beacon of how to do things right.